as you know, I'm a big advocate for Bitcoin. And I'd love to know what your relationship with Bitcoin has been, because I know it's been quite fun. Um, and I need to just get this idea out, which is that for me, Bitcoin is it's a savings tool. So every 12 months, Bitcoin is appreciating historically at 66% since inception. Now that will slow down over the next 10, 20 years each year. But from a financial capital perspective, in my opinion, the risk-free rate of return is now Bitcoin. If you cannot beat Bitcoin, then don't put your money somewhere else. And one of the few places, ironically, to put it in some ways, or contrarianly, is in yourself. Can I beat 66%? Yes, I can. Can I put it into the FTSE 100 or the ASX or the S&P? No, because that won't beat it. And how I would think about that accelerator model that we described is that if you're investing in people at a very early stage and they've done this emotional work, then the base case is just Bitcoin. We could save in it, they can save in it, that's fine. But actually, you got to try and beat that. How do you do that? Well, you take much more risk. And risking an idea and someone is that. So that's why they could actually work very closely together in that sense. But yeah, so I obviously banged on about Bitcoin. So what's your experience been with Bitcoin? And yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah. Okay. There's a few things I want to speak to. I just need to anchor it in. The first one is like how much fun and inspiration I get talking about Bitcoin from you and like the financial literacy that we've spoken about. And I'll talk about my futures investing and risk profile and actually trading with the last bit of money that I had in my bank account. And then, yeah, the Bitcoin and how I got into it as well, which just all intertwines with everything that we've spoken about. But I do just want to give you credit for just how much conviction and amazing energy you have around Bitcoin. Like I always say, you just talk to Jake and you want to invest in Bitcoin. And, I just feel good when I'm talking about it with you. And also, financial conversations can really scare people. And I know I talk about it from a very different perspective, but I feel very safe and comfortable with you talking about finances. You use words that I don't understand what they mean, but I can at least approach you and say, so Jake, tell me, what does net wealth, net worth, how do you work this out? Like, I helped you with some things, but you've helped me a lot with
cool. Thank you.
understanding as well. So I think that's the best thing is like, you don't put yourself on a pedestal. You just want to help people out. And yeah, that energy really comes across.
Thank you, Jin.
So I'm just going to throw in my investment journey with futures trading. And my parents were so against it. They're like, this is gambling. And I'm like, what? You can make money when the market's going down? And it was actually through that personal development seminar that someone was invited to speak on the stage. And I was like, wow, this is like pattern hunting. And I love looking at patterns. And I actually signed up to start my futures investing journey. And no one really understood what I was doing. And what I loved about this was they spoke about your emotional state as to investing and the different markets that you could invest in dependent on your risk profile. So I think there was the FX 100 or something. There was currencies, and then there was the S&P 500 or whatever it was called. So I don't really understand things. I just go off a feeling. So it was decided that because I had $2,000, the wrong thing was that it was my last $2,000. So I was trading the S&P 500 because it wasn't as volatile. And I would jump on for 90 minutes of my day and I would trade the open market or closed market, whatever it was. And I would look for the patterns. And I just like made thousands within a few minutes. And then I made a loss. And then I chased the loss. And I was like, oh my gosh, they've spoken about this, but I just can't stop clicking the button and trying to get my This is just within a few days where it's like, you've got days to trade. And I was like, I don't have the emotional resilience for this because this is the last of my money. I cannot lose it. So my mindset around the money I was trading with was important. And so I got out at a loss, but I didn't lose all of my money, maybe a few $100s. And I thought one day I'll go back and I'll do the futures trading because it was quite fun. I've not gone back since. I then invested in some gold, physical gold, because a friend told me, and I really trust my friends and what they do. And then Bitcoin was this elusive thing, and my friends were making bucket loads of money, but I didn't know how to get in. It's just like the click the button paralysis. And it was actually a client of mine, a long-term client, who said, hey, there's this online course. It was just post-COVID. Do you want to come over to my house and we'll watch it? And it teaches you how to start trading in Bitcoin. Because in the meantime, I'm just watching the market go up and up and up and wishing that I had have gotten in. And so I went over to her place 3 weeks on like a Wednesday night. We did an hour and a half. We set up our wallets and exchanged money to see what we should do, what are the exchanges that we should use. And I was like, that was $180 to learn how to do that. I don't think it was even that much. It was so cheap. But it's that whole thing of we often think it's harder than it is. And there are people out there providing a service to help us make the move because it's so good that we just need to find that person that matches us, learn, what exchanges do we use? How do we click the button? How do we trade? And so it follows the whole pattern that I see myself and my clients go through, is that we have a desire. I want to invest in Bitcoin. We make a decision to do that. And then we might invest and follow someone's process and we commit to it and we do the work and we get there faster if we have support. So I decided to put 20,000 New Zealand dollars in, and I had been making decent money. So I was like, all right, let me put it in. Otherwise, I just tend to spend it. And I said to myself, when this doubles, when I get to 40,000, I'm taking my 20,000 out, and whatever stays in there is just play money. I haven't lost anything. I invested 20,000. I think it must have been at the end of 2021. And then the market just dropped and I lost half of it. But I had heard it's the long game. You need to just stay in there. And so I never looked at my Bitcoin. And I think it wasn't until, I don't know, when we worked together a couple of years ago, 18 months ago.
2023, I remember now, is when we were working together. April, May, June, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit later in the year.
I never looked at my Bitcoin. But then when you started talking about Bitcoin, I'm like, I better look at what it's doing. And it started creeping up. And then it was either when you or Loz were messaging me saying, have you seen what Bitcoin's done? I'm like, oh, I'd actually go and check. And then it was just teetering at like 38, 37,000. I'm like, no, leave it in there until I get to 40K. And then all of a sudden it just catapulted. And I took my 20K out and I was chatting to you and I was like, Jake, I've taken my 20K out and now it's just play money. That was my plan that I followed. And then I got emotional and I'm like, I'm going to take the rest out. And you asked me a great question. You're like, Jen, what are you going to do with that money? And it's like, that's so interesting, Jake. I just like sitting, watching it there in my bank account and it's not doing anything. And I said, surely the market's going to drop and then I'll put it back in. And it just kept on increasing. And it was actually Susan, one of your family members, who said, get back in. And I got back in even though, it was still higher. So my money's back in Bitcoin and I'm not looking at it. I'm trusting that it's growing. And now I'm just considering on a regular basis actually just depositing, because I know that when I got into investing in index funds, again, that was a recommendation by a friend that I just trusted. They brought out Sharesies and Invest Now, and I just started with $50 a month. And before I knew it, there was like hundreds of thousands in there. And I have pulled that money out at times and I have reinvested in myself. And I do feel like the investment in myself and the evidence I've created is better than Bitcoin. But now another thing that...
But then what do you do with the returns from that?
Exactly. And I think I shared this with you. I was listening to some seminar and I really loved what the entrepreneur said, is that actually it's not your business that creates wealth. It's what you do with the money that you generate from your business and how you invest it that creates wealth. And so that's just kind of stuck with me. And now I've got to work towards that. That's my next process, is working towards just putting that money away. Because as I said, I do like to spend. And if I see it there, then I tend to spend. But it was interesting, that 20K, I could not spend it. I just, not because I didn't want to, but I just feel like I didn't have anything to spend it on. So what's the point? Just chuck it back in Bitcoin. And now it's grown.
Yeah, well done. Thank you for sharing all that, Jin. the comment you just made about it's not your business that creates the wealth, it's how you then invest it. I would actually push back quite strongly on that, in that I absolutely think it's your business that creates your wealth. You've got wealth creation and you've got wealth growth and wealth maintain or protection. And you can't invest unless you create it. So you have to do that in the first place. But what your investing strategy could do is grow it.
Mm.
And just to be, I think it's quite
Yeah.
important difference that.
Yes.
And in my opinion, so you describe money as being a byproduct of who you are. In my opinion, the best way to protect the byproduct of who you are is stacking Bitcoin.
Mm.
And so all of the investment options that are out there at different people's fingertips, from a purely financial capital perspective, the risk reward in Bitcoin is better than anything else. And that's because you can have it in self custody. They can't print any more of these things. And that's why I get very, very excited about it, because it kind of solves this big problem. You're like, hang on, so you just have to buy this stuff and sit on it. Like that can't be right. It kind of completely breaks your brain.